Senhoras e senhores, pedimos.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please take your seats so that we are able to begin our closing ceremony. Mrs. Kayla Simpson has joined us, the president of the National Association of Transvestites and Intersexual People.
O governo brasileiro,
The Brazilian government, being aware of the need to listen to the civil society, having them participate in the public policy preparation process, announced the creation of the Social G20 with the target of expanding the participation of non-government players in decision-making processes of the G20 meetings. Throughout this year, the Social G20 has supported the work of 3 engagement groups, bringing them together to the political and financial trails of the G20. We called young people, fighting groups, and non-government players to participate. The work of all these players involved resulted in this social summit, which is now being closed. Today, the result of 1 year of participatory building of consensus in civil society is going to be presented to the President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa, Ronald Lamola. In the coming days, these results will be submitted to the Leaders' Summit of the G20.
para dar início a essa sessão, senhoras e senhores, convida-se a fazer.
We will now invite the national coordinator of the Landless Movement, MST, Seris Harishi.
Bom dia.
Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin inviting the recyclable material picker, Sariano Wipe, to share these words of greeting with me.
Bom, quero dar bom dia novamente.
I want to greet all of you, all the peoples of the world, in the name of our president and the representative of our president. I would like to say that we have been very well received by this beautiful piece of the Social G20, a social summit before the meeting of world leaders is a watershed in our discussions. This meeting makes us think about what basis and what common commitments are we going to embrace. The advancement of the thinking of the extreme right in the world are an example of violent, xenophobic, and segregationary activities to act to the detriment of a huge majority which is exploited, violated. And we want to change this logic. It's more than we wish. This is necessary. This is mandatory for us to continue to exist. The challenges for this G20 meeting under the leadership of our dear president indicates a clear and effective path ahead. We need to do something to establish a new global governance that do not allow for the intermission of one nation over the other. The world cannot keep silent when faced with this genocide caused by Israel against the Palestinian people, as the inhuman blockade that is maintained over Cuba for so many decades. And the pact for the lives of people must be above capital-related interests. No more wars. Peoples of the world need to be respected. Our common home is agonizing. We are attracted by signs that have been imposed by the exploitation of nature that is going to lead us to a situation of collapse. More than desirable, it is necessary that the world, the peoples, and the leaders are involved in transforming this reality. And this is only going to be possible inverting the logic and the economic production. To think about fair transition and is to think about human lives, respecting needs and understanding the forces, changing value and concrete action paradigms. Finally, the fight against hunger and poverty and the fight against inequalities is only going to be possible with the effective involvement of all of you, establishing new forms of production and reproduction and the production of wealth in the world. Hunger is a project of violence. Poverty leads to inequality. And this is a system that points to the need of having the self-determination and sovereignty rights. We will only reach peace and global justice when we go back to our land and when we are free of private interest, when we have a common interest to live well with dignified conditions of life and work for all, whenever we understand that our common home need to be cared so that the coming generations may understand the true meaning of human intelligence. May this social G20 be a first step for the transforming action of a world where we all fit and where we all live with dignity without being exploited. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, some of you already know me. Most of you know that I am that guy that remains behind the scenes. And I was given this opportunity and I want to use it. I would like to greet President Lula, First Lady Janja. I would also greet somebody who helps international alliances of workers in other countries, Minister Mauro Vieira, our Ambassador of Foreign Affairs. We always follow the discussions at the COP since Copenhagen of waste pickers associations, and we know how our work is valued in our country. A few days ago, we met in Geneva, Switzerland, where Ambassador Lisboa met with you. Talking about this, let's think about what Brazil represents outside. Very few of us travel representing our groups, but when we travel in the name of a people, of a nation. Imagine, President Lula, the joy when I began traveling and I thought that we couldn't even be received in the home of people when I got to Switzerland, because I went there last year and I was informed of how much the people was waiting for this change. to have a social structure and a G20 for the first time cannot be imagined, cannot be paid for. I have been traveling representing the International Alliance of Waste Pickers. We have an alliance with indigenous peoples, with domestic workers. We work with street sellers, and it is amazing. We are in a country which is presided by President Lula. I heard this in Switzerland. We want to say how much the world has to learn from Brazil. The world needs to learn from our plurality. This is a role model for everybody. And people need to demand participation. And this is a participatory administration. We have never seen the presence of waste pickers denied at the presidential palace. All ministers know about this. And there's somebody who always opens gates for all of us. He's a simple person. He's a humble man. And he knows everybody and each one of you. And he expresses this through his image. My friend Tuquinha. Truly, sometimes people do not know how the structure works and how important he is for us to take our legacy to other countries. This is amazing. In the INT meeting, all other administrations from Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, everybody receives waste pickers because they have learned from us, the Association of Waste Pickers in Latin America. We need to recognize our work, not only waste pickers, but street dwellers, landless people, all movements who form the Brazilian people. We build a nation. We are Brazil's people, and a plural people like the Brazilian people. I am going to travel tomorrow. Let me take your energy just a little bit. I will take the energy of the social G20, the first summit, having a waste picker speaking. A hand of applause for this first moment in the G20 in South Africa. I am sorry, my friend, Mr. President of South Africa. Let's work together. Long live Africa. Long live South Africa.
Muito obrigada, Severino. Senhoras e senhores, convidamos...
Ladies and gentlemen, we also invite to the stage Maria Juliana Souza Freitas. She is here with me, and she represents the Reference Center for People with Handicaps. Thank you, Maria Juliana. Thank you for being here with us. And the people cries, a united population is never going to be defeated. We invite you all to wear your headphones to listen to our next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now hear Mrs. Paula Foy Carman, the Nobel Peace Award of 2011.
Hello, Brazil. Peace be upon all of you. Assalamu alaikum. Obey, venido, jamais será vencido. Obey, venido, jamais será vencido. Obey, venido, jamais será vencido. Yes, this is Brazil that I want to visit, to hear. Brazil that represents the voice of people. The voice of people the struggle of people, their determination to create change and peace around the world. Equality at the same time. So thank you, President Lula, for inviting me to this great social G20 summit. Thank you, Brazil, for hosting me to be part of you. I don't know if there is translation or should I continue in English? Is there direct, should I continue? So, anyone who doesn't understand English will feel what I say, okay? So, I love you, Brazil. Te amo, Brazil. Te amo, Brazil. So, again, thank you, President, for inviting me to be here in the social G20. So I am here representing the international NGOs. I am here representing the power of women who include many women around the world came here to Brazil or via online or everywhere who want to send a very strong message to the G20 summit. So they asked me to talk about how to build and how to protect global peace. I think it is a very important topic that we can discuss these years and to discuss here in Brazil day before the G20 summit. How to create, how to build, how to protect the global peace. The global peace now has a lot of threats. There is a lot of things that attack and threaten the global peace. One is the climate change caused by the global warming. Two is the escalating wars, conflict, oppression around the world. Three is the absence of the economic equality. Is the increasing poverty. Four is the lack of efficient global governance. So if we want to build, to create, to protect global peace, we have to address all these four important issues. Now, we are here in Rio, the great city that hosted three very important summits on the climate change. Three Rio climate change summits was here, hosted here in this city. And yes, there is some progress after these three summits, but the reality is that there is no real change in the decreasing the global warming. No real. There is no implementation to the three results or outcomes of the Rio climate change summits. So the problems is not with the summits, with the conventions, with the agreements. The problems is with the implementation. Implementation. So, what we want now, and I am so happy and so optimistic of this summit because it's now again in Brazil and under the leadership of the President Lula. So I urge him and his administration to make the resolutions of the three Rio summits on the climate change and the coming of resolution after tomorrow's summit to be followed by the Brazilian people and by the Brazilian president and government. So it's most important now that we gather all our efforts, especially the leaders of the G20 that will meet tomorrow. They have act now to decrease the global warming and to decrease the emissions, the gas emissions in our planet, to protect our planet from the degradation that attack the ecosystem and the biodiversity of our mother planet. This is very important. This is number one, because climate change causes a lot of instability, causes mass flee and displacement, causes a lot of resource lackness, and this attacks global peace. Second, the increasing wars, conflict, and oppression. Now the oppression is increasing everywhere. The tyrannies become stronger and stronger. The wars in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Lebanon, in my country Yemen, in Sudan, in Libya, in many countries in Africa, the oppression, the injustice cause a lot of this stability, a lot of injustice, a lot of, again, mass displacement, wars increasing everywhere. So, if we want to build and protect global peace, we should stop wars. We should stop wars. And we should stop occupation. Occupation should be stopped now. No more occupation. Occupation should be stopped. We should protect democracy and defend on democracy. We should support women and youth to be there in every field in the life, especially in the decision making. We should protect indigenous people, giving them all their rights. So this is how to build peace and to create global peace. Third, we should reduce the big gap between wealthy countries and poor countries. Economic equality is the key of peace building. Economic equality is the key of peace building. Now, the poor countries become poorest and poorest and poorest, and the rich countries become richest and richest and richest. Poverty is everywhere. And the leaders who will meet tomorrow, they have 85% of the GDP, of the global GDP. As they have the wealth, as they have the influence, they should carry the responsibility to narrow the gap between wealthiest countries and poorest countries. They have to carry the responsibility to distribute the wealth to the poorest country, to create sustainable development everywhere in this planet. This is how to create sustainable peace. Fourth is the lack of the international governance. We have a very big shortage in the global governance. We have a very big shortage. The most important international institutions should be reformed, like the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations, the Security Council himself should be reformed. Those organizations unfortunately marginalized the voices of the Global South. They marginalized the voices of the Global South. And they represent the real inequality between nations. The veto, the P5 veto itself represents the inequality between nations. So we have to remove the right of the P5 countries to veto. This veto represents the inequality and lead to the inefficient, participation and practices of the Security Council. So we need to reform these international institutions if we really want to build global peace. Here, we, the people, call the leaders who will be gathering tomorrow, that they have to take and to feel responsible on solving the problems that they cause. They have the power. They have the power. They should, we are telling them, the world is watching you. You have to use your power to heal, not to harm. You should use your power to unite, not to divide. You should use your power to solve problems, not to create problems. This is our message to the leaders that will meet tomorrow in Rio. Finally, President Lula, I'm so proud of you. Really so proud of you. You are the hero of those fighters for social justice. You are the... For me, I never say this to any president around the world. But with you, President Lula, I convey you the thanks from the people who fight for social justice. You represent them. So please, be strong and continue your commitment to the social justice. Continue and don't doubt on it. You are not only the representative of Brazilian people. You are representative of every person in the planet who is struggling, fighting, sacrificing, dreaming for equality and social justice. At the same time, I want to thank you on behalf of Palestinian people and Arab people and Arab Spring. Thank you for standing with Palestinian people. Thank you for condemning the genocide in Palestine committed by Israel. Thank you for condemning the apartheid that caused and used by Israel against Palestinian people. Thank you so much. And to the South Africa, I was expecting the president, and now he's the representative. Thank you so much to South Africa. Thank you on behalf of Arab Spring countries. Thank you on behalf of Arab people. Thank you on behalf of all Palestinian people, because you were brave enough to hold Israel accountable in the International Court for Justice. Thank you, dear, and I love you, Brazil. Thank you, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Muito obrigada, senhora.
Mrs. Toa Carmen, journalist who represents the International Civil Society. We will now continue with the ceremony, and we would now like to call the Minister of the Secretariat General of the Presidency of the Republic and General Coordinator of the Social G20. Minister, you have the floor. Good morning again. Good morning, all of you colleagues, men and women who are here at this moment when we close the Social G20. What we had here was a plenary meeting before you arrived, Mr. President, to approve the document which has been discussed for all this year and during the Social Summit. A document was prepared to summarize our ideas, a document that's going to be accompanied by a production notebook by the 13 engagement groups, plus the production of social movements, the movements of organized civil societies in Brazil and of countries that are members of the G20. I would like to begin greeting the person who's responsible for the idea of this process, the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. This has only been possible here because Lula is presiding Brazil and because you have helped us to build this moment together. I would like to greet and embrace my friend Janja Lula da Silva. And in her name, I would like to thank her and her office team and the office of the President of the Brazil, who were always partners in building this G20. They were along with us to make the social G20 a reality. I would like to greet and compliment our host mayor, Mayor Eduardo Paz. And through him, I would like to thank all his team. You have been partners, always. Eduardo, if it weren't for your partnership, perhaps it would have been very difficult, because things only become possible when we work with the people. Without the people, it is very difficult. If it were not for the determination of President Lula and his consistency and his commitment, perhaps we would not have been here. And partners like you, Eduardo, have been very important in this process. I would like to embrace Ronald Lamora, representing here the South African government. We are so happy for having been able of giving you the baton to South Africa in the African continent. I would like to greet Mrs. Lamola, who gave us the honor of being here with us. I would like to embrace my dear partner, Minister Mauro Vieira. I would like to thank all of those in Itamaraty for your partnership. Minister Mauro, Minister Haddad, and your teams have been fundamental for us to be able to attract engagement groups and Sherpas, the economic and the geopolitical trails, so that the people could have access to the building of this process. I would like to embrace all my colleagues, ministers who are here with us, who are right there, hiding in the corner. Please understand, because today the central stage belongs to the people, represented by social movements who are here with us. I would like to embrace all representatives who are here with us today. And I would like to apologize you all because I want to compliment you all through Deputy Gleisi Hoffman, the president of my party. I would like to greet social movements. I want you, with your hands over your hearts and with your strength of your retinas, take pictures of this panel, people who are representing you from all the corners of this country, from the organized movements of our homeland and of the countries of G20. We have all colors, all races, and all representations present here. You are all here represented in this process of collective construction. I would like to embrace Missy Carmen for your fight, for your story, for being so daring, and for the fact that you represent social movements of G20 countries, and for the speech of freedom you gave us all in this historic moment. I want to embrace Ceres and Zeaki, the waste pickers, and the landless movement. We have had all movements participating in this building process. You were all protagonists. We began with CUT, the union movement, and we are now closing with the field movement, with Mazé from the Daisy March, who read the document approved unanimously. And today, a waste picker and the landless woman is representing the social movements of our country today. And I want to share this with our colleague who represents a council symbolizing one of the topics President Lula placed as a core topic of G20, the president of CONSEA, the Council for Food Security of Brazil, our colleague Berta. When she represents the civil society with those who go hungry, she is the one that repeats that President Lula wants to do away with hunger. On the 1st of January 2003, President Lula entered the Planalto Palace with the people, and he met with 33 million of people going hungry, and a third of the population going hungry. In less than 2 years, under the leadership of Lula, the government has removed 25 million people of the situation of hunger, and we still have 8.5 million who we will look for, because all Brazilians, all citizens deserve the right of receiving 3 meals per day. I would like to embrace all the friends who are here, leaders of social movements, leaders of sectors of civil society, representatives, and the whole population who came to be with us during the social G20. Please feel yourselves hugged and complimented. I would like to thank the Brazilian press that has covered our social G20. I would like to thank influencers who are developing extraordinary work, all of us who have made social G20 one of the most discussed topics in Brazil and in the world. And I want to ask your permission to thank colleagues, employees of the Secretariat General of the Presidency of Brazil, who have been instrumental for us to develop our work. It's been a year of work. Employees there of the civilian staff team, of the Ministry of Economy, of the team of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of SECOM, and of the President's office and of the First Lady's office. A hand of applause to these workers who have put social G20 standing up. I was coming from the hotel to this place, and I was thinking about what should I say. I have already said so much. I have been interviewed so many times. What can I say? What else can I say? But very briefly, I would just like to say, men and women dream. God allows us to do it, and our work begins. President Lula dreamed. We dreamed together. And the social G20 work was born and is here to stay. My colleagues, my friends, President Lula, my dear Janja, 47,945 people enrolled with the social G20. 17,703 actively participated in discussions and in the fair of the three paths, fighting against hunger and sustainability. Certainly, Mr. President, more than 50,000 people were here along this port between the Mauá Plaza and the Boulevard. The social G20 area from the Mauá Square to Boulevard. And it is impossible to be in Rio without using a metaphor. This beautiful energy, this city that is the picture of Brazil, a city that has mountains, beaches, that has a culture, a history, and an extraordinary population. A city that's so happy that it is a contagion to Brazil. The G20 territory from Mauá Square to the Boulevard area has been the people's walk in this party of democracy. The topic has been our people. The group that comes before Samba schools has been the diversity of our people. The family represented the accumulation of the strength of social movements of Brazil and of the countries of the G20. The music has echoed from the Festival for a Global Alliance Against Hunger. The choreography has involved the different colors of a miscegenated people. The drums have dictated the rhythm of a world without hunger, fighting against climate change, and under a new world governance. The harmony, the song, the dancing happened in several languages. Even if people didn't understand everything, they managed to understand each other because of the need of having the participation of the people in G20 countries. The queen of our drums has been the need of social justice and of peace in the world. And the lady that carries the banner was represented by all of you, members of organized civil societies in Brazil and in G20 countries. The award received after this championship in the Party of Democracy of the Social G20 that came before the meeting of the heads of state, and which is going to be handed to you and to the government of South Africa, is the participation of the people defending public policies that will be built by the heads of state. May this social G20 open a hole in the present going into the G20 so that the past, our history, the fight of our people may build a better future for mankind and for our peoples. Now, the award is going to be transferred to the government of South Africa. And our wish, our will, our need, as the Titans would say, is that the next social G20 hosted by South Africa may be even larger and better than the G20 hosted in Brazil. It's going to be a lot of work. You will have to ask Janja to help you, and also you will like to ask the help of the presidency team of Itamaraty and mainly of our organized social movements in Brazil. Ask them, and they will help. I would like to say goodbye. I am deeply moved. I've been deeply moved. I went to all kiosks. I went to all discussion rooms. I went to all stands. I greeted people in the boulevard. I heard people. I listened to people. I went to the festival. I haven't been to the Kriya, but I'll go there this afternoon. I went to all little corners of the G20 territory. I heard people. I felt the odor of our people, the colors of our people, the diversity of our culture, the flavors and the different accents of our people. Had I been the mayor of the city, Eduardo, I would decree that Boulevard, as of today, is going to be called Boulevard of the People. Had I been a representative of the city of Rio, I would propose a bill to change the name of the boulevard after the social G20. It should now be called Boulevard of our people. I would like to say goodbye now, saying thank you so much, Brazil. Thank you. Thank you to all social organized movements of Brazil and of the countries of the G20. What you've done here was to write an important chapter of the history of our country and of the world. Thank you very much, President Lula, for giving me the honor of fighting by you, fighting to build freedom, fighting to build and help you to change Brazil for the better. Thank you all. May God bless you in the mission of changing this world. Thank you. Right now, the President of the Republic is going to receive from the President and from the ex-President of the Food and Food Security Council, Elisabetta Rescini and Francisco Menezes, of the winner of the Nobel Prize of 2011, and of the National Coordinator of the Landless Movement, Seris Haris, the document with the result of discussions that happened during the social G20 meeting. While the document is handed over to the President, the document that is the outcome of a whole year of participatory consensus in Brazil with the involvement of social movements, organizations of civil society, and of engagement groups that form the social G20,
Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies and gentlemen, let us now hear the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Ronald Lamola.
Muito obrigado. Thank you very much. In South Africa, when we say power to the people, we say Amanda. 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 Thank you very much, His Excellency President of the Republic of Brazil, Mr. Lula Inácio Lula da Silva, his wife, my dear brother, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mario Vieira, and my wife, Ms. Lamola, all the heads of states who are here, Your Excellencies, foreign ministers who are also here, all the social movements from across Brazil and all over the world who are here, you have made this a very beautiful G20. Allow me to extend President Cyril Ramaphosa's apology to his dear brother, President Lula da Silva. For today, due to pressing challenges in our country, he could not make it to be here. On behalf of President Ramaphosa and the people of South Africa, we congratulate President Lula and the Brazilian people and all social movement of the world to elevate this innovative idea for the participation of social and civil society groups in the work of the G20. You have upped the standard, and as South Africa will learn from you. With your experience, we believe we will meet this challenge. South Africa strongly believes that civil society serves as a vital engine connecting the G20 member countries with the voices and needs of everyday individuals, often referred to as the grassroots. In the context, we wholeheartedly applaud Brazil's courageous initiatives in organizing this meeting of civil society and all social groups from across Brazil and the world. Your Excellency, South Africa, we assure you that we are ready to assume the G20 presidency for 2025 from 1 December 2024 and will take forward the work of the civil and social movements. Brazil has upped the standard and will ensure that you participate, you play a role in shaping the world. To truly make South Africa's G20 presidency a people's G20, we have embraced the vibrant and dynamic African leadership style, renowned for its inclusivity, participation, and consultation for common good. The colorful tapestry of our diverse nation will be woven in our everyday thread to present the voices and contribution of our diverse population. We believe that this approach will transform our people from mere spectators into active weavers of our collective future, ensuring that their hands and hearts shape the outcomes of South Africa's G20 presidency. Through this rich collaborative process, we will create a living mosaic of shared aspirations and achievements, reflecting the true spirit of our nation. This further resonates with our chosen theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Our call is heartfelt plea for the unified efforts and mutual support among member nations, urging us to stand together in the face of common challenges. We envision a world where equal opportunities are not just a dream, but a reality for all, where every individual has the chance to thrive. This commitment extends beyond our present needs, ensuring that we do not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own. Together we can weave a future that is not only just and equitable, but also sustainable, nurturing the hopes and dreams of those who will inherit the world we build today. We aim to build on the remarkable work of the past G20 presidencies, including Brazil, who have laid a foundation for the reform of global financial architecture with a clear intention to build fairness into the global financial system and ensure that the reform agenda delivers the intended impact and outcomes, reflecting the needs and demands of developing countries. We will want to reverse the imbalances where the Global South only receives 3% of the global financial support for climate change and development. It is our view that the SDGs remains the most relevant benchmark for the developmental priorities of developing countries and must remain central to the work of the G20. For this reason, South Africa intends to use its G20 presidency to action the Pact of the Future, which world leaders adopted at the UNGA 2079 on the 22nd September 2024. We believe that the Pact of the Future is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to forge global consensus and make progress on priorities such as the SDGs. Furthermore, we are cognizant of the commendable work done by the social and civil society partners to raise the level of ambition in global commitments when the world is more divided. We endeavor to strengthen our relationship with the engagement groups to deliver the G20 of the people. We note the recommendation made by the various engagements on priorities for its G20 presidency, including the social movement. Furthermore, we note with interest the call to mainstream children's, adolescents' rights and interest in the G20's work. We look forward to further engagements with the social movement. Like Brazil, with the G20 Social Summit, it believes that more space needs to be created to allow for greater civil society participation in the G20 work. Whilst the creation of G20 engagement groups have somewhat democratized the G20, engagement groups are largely comprised of formal professional groups such as the B20, L20, P20, U20, Y20, W20, and the C20. More can be done to enhance civil society participation further, and we look forward to do so. An inclusive G20 is no longer an option, but an imperative. Thus, we wholeheartedly commend Brazil's innovative inclusion of the favelas G20, the G20 favelas and other marginalized groups who often bear the brunt of hunger and poverty. This inspired initiative shines a light on those who are frequently overlooked, ensuring their voices are heard and their struggles are acknowledged. It is a powerful testament to the spirit of solidarity and inclusivity, reminding us all that true progress is only possible when we uplift every member of our global community. This approach not only addresses immediate needs, but also paves the way for a more equitable and compassionate world. We are glad of this solidarity amongst the people of the world. South Africa is free today from apartheid because of the solidarity of people of the world, including the people of Brazil. It is against this background that South Africa continues to advocate for the self-determination, for the cessation of fire and hostilities in Gaza and in Palestine. We continue to call for accountability for the state of Israel and for the de-escalation of the conflict that is continuing in the Middle East. We stand with the people of Palestine and we call for all members of society to do the same. I look forward to welcoming you to South Africa, where we'll host many engagement groups meetings, including the social movement. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free Palestine. Amandla. 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 Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigada, senhor ministro.
Thank you very much, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Ronald Lamola. Ladies and gentlemen, the mentor, the creation of the social G20, the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, Mr. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Queridas companheiras,
dear brothers and sisters, dear ministers, men and women ministers that are here at this meeting, dear brothers and sisters that represent Brazilian social movement and foreign social movements that are attending our meeting, I'm going to apologize for our brothers and sisters because I will not need to read the nominata. Janja could help me to name everybody that is here. And greeting my sister Janja, I will be greeting all the women that are here in this meeting, and greeting my brother Márcio Macedo. I will also be greeting all the ministers and of all peoples attending here our meeting. I was prepared today to talk only for 5 minutes, because you know very well that I have 6 speeches till Tuesday to do, and each speech cannot go beyond 5 minutes. It's very important for us to learn that the presidents that traveled from all the world to come to Brazil, they can only speak for 5 minutes. And when I travel abroad, sometimes a 24-hour trip, I can also talk only for 5 minutes. And this makes us to learn to face the difficulty of making such a short speech. And last afternoon, I was with my advisor discussing each point of my speech, because we have less words, and these words have to be more meaningful, more precious, with much more enthusiasm and very delicate. So, before I make my speech here, I would like to say to all of you that it's not easy for us to work and to engage civil society to participate in certain activities that are government activities. Everybody remembers that when I was in the presidency, my first term, that we had meetings with the Mercosul, the social movements and the trade union movement. At the end of each meeting, they would present for the heads of government of South America and of Mercosur their demands, and we would listen to them to make their speeches. And then after that, this ended, because it depends a lot on the will of each leader. And I participated in the first G20 in 2008 due to the subprime crisis, that crisis that happened mainly where the Americans lost 10 million houses during the subprime crisis. I participated the first time in that G20 in 2010, in 2009 in London. And I took Dilma, that was the president-elect, to the South Korean G20 meeting. And then 14 years after, I'm participating now in Brazil in another G20 meeting. I participate in South Africa, in China, and in India. Well, I could only try to invent the G20 Social Forum here in Brazil. I couldn't give hunches to other presidents for them to take that initiative. I couldn't do that. So I had to do it here in Brazil. And I stayed imagining what could we do so that society, civil society of all parts of the world take over the work to reinforce so that things could happen, taking into account the needs of the people. And I invited President Ramaphosa from South Africa to. I gave him a call, especially for him. He said he would attend this meeting, and then he gave me a call that due to personal reasons and some political reasons in South Africa, he couldn't come attend this closing meeting, and he sent his foreign affairs minister. And I am sure that President Ramaphosa will be a social G20 forum that will be great in South Africa, and I hope that I'll be there attending that social G20 forum in South Africa and to participate in the G20 summit of the leaders. What I believe is important is that this is an historical moment for me and a historical moment for the G20. During this year, this group were on a third track that added up to the financial track and the political track. That is the social track that was built by all of you. Here, it took form expression as a collective will, motivated to seek for a world that is more democratic, more fair, and more diverse. In an unprecedented way, the engagement groups could interact with their foreign affairs ministers and the finance ministers and governors of the central banks of the biggest economies of the planet for the very first time. I had the satisfaction to have personal dialogue with representatives of each one of these engagement groups. In the last days, for the first time in the trajectory of the G20, civil society from different parts of the world in their diverse forms of organization gathered to formulate and present their demands to the summit meeting of the leaders. In the 16 years since the first G20 summit meeting, the G20 consolidated itself as the main forum of world economic cooperation and as an important space for political consultation. But the economy and the international politics are not the monopoly of experts and bureaucrats only. They're not only in the offices or in the rooms of the stock exchange in New York or São Paulo, neither in the rooms of Brussels, Beijing, Washington, and Brasilia. They are part of the day-to-day of our lives, enhancing or narrowing our possibilities. The G20 members have the power and the responsibility to make a difference to a lot of people. For the women, to foster entrepreneurship and female economic autonomy as the working group about women empowerment discussed. For the traditional people and indigenous people, when they promote the biodiversity of their products as the initiative that was made on bioeconomy. For the Afro-descent, when they adopted Sustainable Development Goals 18 on racial equality as the Working Group on Development did. For the planet, when they give incentives to climate ambition aligned with the objective to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees as the Task Force on Climate did. Nothing of that would have been possible without the contribution of all of you that are here today. The Brazilian chairmanship would have not advanced in these three priorities that it has chosen if it wasn't for the decisive participation of the organizations and social movements that are part of the social G20. Your permanent mobilization of all of you was fundamental to leverage the work of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty and to advance the taxation of the super rich, to guarantee the fulfillment of the goals and to triple the use of renewable sources of energy and anticipate the neutrality of the emissions, and to take forward our call for an action for the global governance reform, assuring to the multilateral institution, making them more representative. The Brazilian chairmanship of the G20 will leave a robust legacy of its achievements, but there is still a lot to be done so that we can improve the lives of the people. To reach the hearts and minds of the ordinary citizen, the governments need to break away from the dissonance that exists more and more of the voice of the marketplace and the voice of the streets. Neoliberalism has aggravated the economic and political inequality that today affects the democracies. The G20 needs to discuss many measures to reduce the cost of living and to promote lower week work and lower working hours that will be more balanced. It needs to listen to the youth to confront the consequence of the task that we have left unfinished. It needs to preserve the public space so that extremism will not generate backward situation and neither threaten rights. It needs to commit itself with peace so that geopolitical rivalries and conflicts should not deviate us from the road to sustainable development. I will take all your recommendations to the final statement that you delivered to me today, to the other leaders of the summit meeting, and to work with South Africa so that it will be considered in the discussions of the different groups. I hope that this social track of the G20 will continue in the next years, opening more and more our discussions for the engagements of the citizens. This closing ceremony is a landmark that shows a new stage that will demand continuous work during the next 365 days of the year, and not only at the eve of the meetings of the summit meeting. And I also count on the force of the will and dynamism of civil society for two other events that Brazil will host for the next year: the BRICS Summit meeting and the COP30. So we will continue to build together a world with more fairness and a sustainable planet. But I cannot end my speech without improvising a little bit, address it to some other issues. Now improvising. The message is very short and direct. Here, everybody had experiences of the participation at the G20 Social G20. I participated in the first one as the President of the Republic, and I participated in the second one, in the World Social Forum. And the World Social Forum had a problem, is that we would gather so many people around the world at the World Social Forum. We had a lot of discussions, but we will go back home to know, without knowing what we had to do in the next day. And then we would only be called again to participate in another World Social Forum in the following year. And so we would discuss, well, we had a lot of discussions. There were many leaflets, but we left the World Social Forum without knowing what to do after. And that everybody got tired, and people started to participate in the World Social Forum. Now, the Social G20 Forum cannot stop here today. You are making history. You're making a historical decision. You are opening a new struggle that you represent during 365 days a year. This is just a beginning. Do not wait for South Africa so that we'll have another meeting. No. The issues that we discussed here are three issues, very important issues. When I left my prison, the first thing was to talked with Pope Francis and the World Councils of Churches because I wanted to draft a statement about the outrage that civil society has, that of a society that is left aside. You know that in each country we have an enormous amount of people that are treated as if they were invisible people, that the leaders do not want to see that they exist, and people that participate only in statistics, and everybody knows that they exist, but they're despised and suffer contempt by the leaders. They're despised by the national budgets, and so who knows that you that live know how these poor people live, or you. And so that's why we included these three issues in the order of the day. The first one is the struggle against inequality, hunger, and poverty. And it's not only some kind of inequality. We're talking about racial inequality, gender inequality, food inequality, health inequality, education inequality, inequality of the space where we live, inequality of everything we use, the water, of access to water, inequality of almost everything we do in life. And that's why we included these items, because so we don't have to wait for President Ramaphosa the G20 has to happen every day and not wait for South Africa. We're talking about 365 days, and we're talking about 733 million people in the world that are starving or in hunger. The world last year spent $2.4 trillion in an arms race, but could have spent that money to end with the hunger in the world of these 733 million. So we had, in the last years, more conflicts. This is the period of more conflicts since the Second World War. There's a lack of solidarity to end with these conflicts. And so we give importance to the UN Security Council, and we have it lacks representation. When the UN was created, it only had 56 members. Today is 196 countries. So I ask myself, where is the African continent at the UN Security Council? Well, the Latin American countries are represented in the UN Security Council, and the Asian countries in the UN Security Council. Only Egypt has 126 million inhabitants. Ethiopia had 150 million inhabitants. Algeria, 100 millions. And South Africa, plus Brazil, 200 million. Plus Mexico has millions of it. Germany, India. So where are these countries? They do not participate in the UN Security Council to make collective decisions and to help us to do things the right way in peace. So that's why we have to make it clear that this struggle is our daily struggle. The climate change issue is not an issue for the environmental minister, Marina Silva, or for the students in the university. The climate issue is an issue that we see happening everywhere, in the street, in our town, in our neighborhood. And we saw snow in Saudi Arabia, we saw raining in the desert, and we had a flood in Rio Grande do Sul. We see what's happening now in Spain with the floods. We saw what happened in Germany, in Italy. Climate is change, is rebelling, and the responsible is the human being. We're the ones that are responsible, because we have to save the only planet that we live, which is Earth. So our struggle is a daily struggle. So it's very important, our brother. I'm very thankful, but it's important that we have to make a schedule. We have to make a schedule, what we need to do in the month of January. What are we going to do in the month of February? What are we going to do in the month of March, May? So we have to schedule ourselves so that we can start to transform policy in reality. And so I used to say that we would only end with the hunger in the day that we transform it in a political issue. it's not only a social issue. It has to be dealt with respect. It's necessary for us to take responsibility. And this is what I'm going to try to do when I take this document to the countries that will attend the G20 Summit meeting. The countries that are here represent 85% of the world GDP and almost 80% of the world trade. And so they have almost 2/3 of the population to these countries at the G20. So we can make a difference here. We can make a difference. So that we can make a difference, you will have to make the difference. Shout out, protest, demand, because otherwise things do not happen, do not move forward. And I want to end here with my brother Eduardo Paz, the mayor of Rio. I don't know if the G20 will be a success here, but this will depend on the assessment that you make. If Rio behaved itself well and that you could manage to participate, that you slept well during the meeting in Rio, because two important events to mark our history, the BRICS that will be here in Brazil meeting and the COP30 that will be in the rainforest in the state of Pará. So everybody of the rest of the world, everybody talks about the Amazon rainforest. You go to Germany, they talk about the Amazon rainforest. You go to South Africa, they talk about the Amazon rainforest. You go to the United States, they talk about the Amazon region. You go to Argentina, they also talk about the Amazon. You go to Mexico, they talk about the Amazon region. Now it's the time for the Amazon to speak for itself to the world. For those that what it wants, they're going to speak for themselves. People have to find out that beneath each tree there's a human being that lives there. There's a fisherman, there's indigenous people, there's a rubber tapper, extractivists, and people have to know so that we can protect our forest. These people have to eat, and for them to eat, the rich countries have to help these people to finance the protection of our tropical forests so that we can treat with dignity our people that live there. So that's why, brothers and sisters, my thanks, my acknowledgement. I want, when you leave this meeting, you leave shouting out. It was not the World Forum Social, a gathering only, that movement that Lula attended. No, it's more than that. Wait a minute. I'm going to mention here what we have here. The document the declaration that you delivered to me is not the end of a process. It's the beginning of a process. And today, I have a second speech that I'll make at the festival tonight. The festival of the Global Alliance Against Hunger. And I can sing a little bit to you if you go tonight to the festival. But what is truly important is that we have to develop a social movement. We have to involve the social movement, the artists, the businessmen and women, the waste pickers. We have to involve the world, because we can change things if we want to change. So that's why, brothers and sisters, thank you very much. From my bottom of my heart, Master, thank you very well for organizing. And I'd like to thank all the people to help you to organize this meeting. And I want to thank above all to the Brazilian people for their generosity, for equality, and for their will to change the history of Brazil and the history of the planet Earth. A great hug to all of you. Happiness and joy for all of you. And I'll see you tonight at the festival of the show of Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. Thank you very much.
esta sessão da primeira cúpula do G20 Social está encerrada. Pedimos a todos que aguardem, por favor, em seus lugares, a saída do presidente da República e da senhora Janja Lula da Silva.